Hi, my name is Angela Jordan, and I am giving a video reflection of the read aloud that I had with my fourth grade class in San Bernardino at Hardy Brown College Prep, where I teach. The name of the book that I chose for my students was called Crown: An Ode to the Fresh Cut by Derek Barnes. I chose this book because I really wanted to validate my students' cultural experience. My students, I felt, could really relate to this character, to this story, and the experience of the character in the story, basically. My students are mostly, or 80%, sorry, African Americans and 20% Latino. So I knew that all the boys in my classroom would be able to relate to this experience of going to the barbershop. And I also knew that most of the girls in my classroom could also relate to this experience because of siblings. In preparing for the read aloud, I read through the book a few times. I felt like I have a deep voice, so I really wanted to practice reading with inflection, pausing, reading more slowly, and also just the ability to hold the book up and show pictures as I was reading. Because I do teach fourth grade, we are reading more rigorous texts, more rigorous literature, so we don't get a chance to just read books like this aloud, and I don't get to normally hold books up and show pictures as we read. Normally we're reading novels, and my students are tracking along with novels or lengthy text. So this was a good experience for me to do. And so in preparing, I really had those elements in mind as I read the book. And also as I prepared, I wanted to think about what questions I could ask that would start a good discussion after we read the book. I wanted the students to get more from the book than just an entertaining story, beautiful illustration. I wanted them to be able to synthesize the genre, structure, author's purpose, and text evidence. I also wanted them to take these elements and dissect them after we read the story. I felt excited because I liked what I was sharing. I felt like I was sharing an experience that I could help validate for them. The experience of going to the barbershop and knowing that this is something that is, within our culture. It's an experience that is cultural to African Americans and Latino students on a weekly or bi-weekly basis. So I was excited because I felt like I really wanted my students to agree and understand the character in this story. I was also excited to know that the story was written to make them proud of this cultural experience of going to the barbershop. When I was done reading, I felt like I had also shared something very important. I felt excited because I knew that they would possibly never see the barbershop experience the same ever again. And mostly I was excited because of the discussion that we would have at the end of our story, my read aloud. Before reading the book, I could see that my students were very interested in this book. I could see that they knew that this book was something that they could relate to from the moment I held up the book with the picture of the boy being proud of his haircut. I knew that they could easily relate to the character. And their reaction was definitely like, they understood something deeply with this character. During the read along or read aloud, my students found the story pretty entertaining. Um, they laughed at parts, like when the character was speaking about when he got his haircut on Thursday. On Friday, his girlfriend was going to rave about how nice he looked and the lines in his hair. So they got a kick out of that. They got a kick out of um, the experience of how a haircut could make you feel smarter. After reading the book, my students' reaction was very, very heartfelt. They clapped at the end of the story and they were smiling, and I knew that they were ready for the discussion that laid ahead for them. I believe that in this read aloud, my strengths were reading with enthusiasm and interest, being able to really pause and soak in what was just read to them, and just helping them to understand the story as we read it. I believe my challenges were being able to actually hold the book while I was reading so that they could see the illustration. Like I said before, I don't have a lot of experience with that because of the grade levels that I've taught previously and this year. And it was kind of hard holding that book up and reading at the same time, so that they could see the illustrations and connect with the story. I also need to do more of this now that I know. So that will be something that I will incorporate into my curriculum, into my class, from here on out, simply because of how engaging the students were. For my next read aloud, I will practice reading, holding the book definitely, and reading so that it is not so awkward and not so awkward that my students are straining to see. I believe that also I will change how my students are arranged in their seating. I want to bring them closer, so that they can see the illustration and the book easily. I do have a class of 35, so I didn't really take into consideration, them being closer to see the book and see the illustrations. I learned, what I learned was that I'm not too old, or my students are not too old for a good book for me to read aloud in the classroom. Even for myself at my age, and even as the teacher, I realized that I enjoyed reading the book. And I also realized that if I was sitting in a seat, if I had exchanged seats with my students, even at my age, I felt like I would still enjoy a good book with illustration, and a good book, and someone just reading aloud to me. So I did learn that as a teacher that I am never too old for this, so that I should not put this on my students. My students, especially up to 5th grade, 6th grade, where I teach, are never too old for a good read aloud. I also learned that I can do read alouds with more practice. I learned that this is something that I need to do for my class on a consistent basis. And I learned that reading a book aloud is a great way to help my students synthesize what they have learned throughout the year. So being able to take this book and synthesize all these elements that we've practiced in longer texts and novels, and to just apply it to this short story or poem was really nice. It was really nice to see my students be able to synthesize all of these literary elements into this story. So it's a great way to just break up the monotony of longer text and read something short and for them to synthesize that. Um, And then last but not least, by doing that, it's a great way to just engage my students. It's a great way to just add another UDL strategy into my curriculum and into the classroom. Thank you.